Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. My name is Jen McAndrew. I'm the Senior Director of Tisch College. And on behalf of Tufts and Tisch College, it's my privilege to welcome you all tonight to our Solomont Speaker Series event with the former United States Congressman, CNN commentator, and author Adam Kinzinger. I really appreciate everyone being here in much or somewhat better weather than our previous date. For those who don't know, this event was originally scheduled during the blizzard times of February. So great to see you all here in the room on a sunny day. And I also want to welcome everyone who's joining us for the live stream on Zoom as well. Tonight, we continue our series of Tisch College events and conversations that will be throughout 2026, and we'll explore a timely and vital question: what's next for American democracy? Together, we are thinking about this theme in the context of the commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We are asking ourselves and each other, what is the state of our democracy? How far have we come? Where are we headed? And what threats, concerns, questions, and opportunities are in front of us? I can't think of a better person to join us in this conversation than tonight's guest. So let me just tell you a little bit about him. From 2011 to 2022, Adam Kinzinger served 6 terms in the United States House of Representatives, where he represented Illinois' 16th Congressional District, which stretches across 14 counties in Northern Illinois. During that time, he served as a member of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and the House Foreign Affairs Committee, including as ranking member of the Subcommittee on Europe, Eurasia, Energy, and the Environment in the 116th Congress. Quite famously, Congressman Kinzinger was one of only 2 Republicans who served on the non-partisan Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. And I know we're going to be hearing more about that tonight. Prior to Congress, Congressman Kinzinger served in the Air Force in both Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom, and later as a pilot in the Air National Guard with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel until his retirement in 2023. He is the author of the New York Times bestselling memoir, Renegade, Defending Democracy and Liberty in Our Divided Country. Joining him in tonight's discussion is our distinguished moderator, who is well known to us at Tisch College, our Dean Emeritus, Alan Solomont. Alan is a lifelong social and political activist, longtime supporter and champion of Tufts University, and former United States Ambassador to Spain and Andorra. He proudly served as our dean from 2014 to 2021, and during that time, he launched this speaker series. The series is now named in his honor, along with his wife, Susan, recognizing their civic leadership and impact, and it's through their generosity that tonight's event is possible. Today, Alan continues to lead across his own civic life, including serving as the chair emeritus of the National Board of J Street, where he advocates a diplomacy-forward foreign policy and a 2-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I want to extend our thanks to Alan and Susan Solomont for their support, as well as to the Tufts Federalist Society for your co-sponsorship tonight. Before I turn things over to our guest, let me ask all the students in the audience to listen generously and to think about your questions, because tonight's event will also include audience Q&A. And with that, let's welcome Congressman Kinzinger and Ambassador Solomont.
Thanks, guys. Hey. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I call her Jennifer because that's what her dad calls her. Let me just give a plug for Adam Kinzinger's book. I listened to it not too long ago, Renegade. It's really a great story.
Thank you.
And after you've learned something about him tonight, I think you'll be very anxious to buy the book.
Thank you.
I get 10%. So, former congressman or congressman, we never give up the titles.
Not in this country, I guess, but you can call me whatever you want.
Okay. Your life has been all about service in the military, in elected office. Tell us what accounts for this, and why did you eventually choose politics as one way to serve, and what comes next in your dedication to this?
Yeah, I guess what led to it, I don't know, except, you're a product of your environment, your upbringing, your family. And my mom was a public school teacher. My dad ran a nonprofit, basically a homeless shelter. He was the CEO of an organization that did that and just had always given his life to, I think he could have gone out and made a ton of money, but uh, gave his life to service on that. And I was just one of those. It's weird because you guys all maybe know somebody like this or some version of this. Like when I was 5 years old, I saw a political yard sign, and for whatever reason, I was like obsessed with it. And I was obsessed with like the fanfare of it. I didn't know much about governance, obviously, at 5. But that just kind of stuck with me. And, I had an interest in what government was, what politics was, what elections were. I also had a deep interest in the military and particularly flying planes. So thanks for paying your taxes because it allowed me to fly your planes. And I think that all just ultimately ended up culminating into an opportunity to run for Congress and something that I never really thought I would have an opportunity to do. I never really thought I could win. And I was lucky enough to do it. And, one of the things that I think stuck with me in Congress is when I came back from Iraq. I basically came back from Iraq in 2009 and made the decision to run. So it was very short thereafter. But I just remember thinking, we're asking young people to be willing to die for this country, which is especially apropos given all the events in the last month or so. We're asking young people to die. Like, if I'm going to run for Congress and then not be willing to put my job on the line, when we're asking people to put their life on the line for this country, then I'm not worthy of it. And I hate to tell you, but I think a significant amount of members of Congress are not worthy of the position that they have, especially given the sacrifice.
I'm going to ask you about that. But,
Okay. All right.
whose yard sign was it?
His name was John Lewis. He was a Democrat running for mayor, and not the same John Lewis, not the same one. This was a white dude running in Jacksonville, Florida.
But he was a Democrat.
Yeah, he was a Democrat, and he lost. So
Is that why you became a Republican?
No, that was the old Southern Democrats, where they were pretty close to Republicans back then, I guess, at the time.
Well, not anymore. So I know that you're a man of deep faith, and tell us a little about the role that faith and religion has played in your journey. And also explain to us what you meant when you said in your farewell address to Congress, our constituents voted us in based on our beliefs, but we cannot use our faith as a sword and shield while ignoring the fact that we are all children of God, that we are all Americans.
Yeah, I mean, look, faith is important because it forms who you are as a person, right? And I think you can't run from that. And I don't think you should. And I think, when you're running for office, and the thing about being in a republic versus a direct democracy is you vote for somebody to take their values to Washington, D.C. and operate with that. And then 2 years later, you can hate them or keep them, right? And so faith just builds that in you. And I went through a whole lot of, even in the last 3 years, by the way, a whole lot of kind of deconstructing my own faith and saying, what do I really believe? As an example, I now believe that there is nothing in the Bible that is Republican, okay? And I don't mean that as just an attack on Republicans, but I clearly what you see in politics today is a certain party trying to, in essence, nationalize Christianity. And I think that violates now when I look back and I kind of read the words of Jesus. I'm like, yeah, I don't see that in here, And so I think it's important just to kind of form your values, form who you are. And then ultimately, too, it gave me a perspective to say, look, I'm going to go to D.C. and represent 700,000 people, okay? My job is not to represent my faith in D.C. My job, I have my values, and I'm going to be clear about what those are. But I represent people that are Jewish, Muslim, different versions of Christianity, or nothing. And my job is to go there and to create the best life for them, how I see the world, as possible, not to convert them. And that was a day one thing for me. I recognized that, and I've always fought back. And so this gets to my farewell address, which is faith is something that's important to you. It is not something that you use as a weapon in politics. Now, with the exception, I'll say, of like, and I'll even sometimes tweet something like this, which talks about, well, Mr. Whoever, that's not what the Bible says, because you're trying to quote Christianity, and let me show you exactly why that's opposite of what you're saying. But like, faith is not meant to be a weapon. It's meant to be things to bring people together, a value of who you are. And that's what I meant. And honestly, I was starting to see in 2000, I guess that would have been the very end of 2022, I was starting to see what we've seen culminate, which is this rise of Christian nationalism that I think is very dangerous and very poisonous.
So the first American Pope is also a son of Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're a Cubs fan or whatever.
I'm a Cubs fan.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Got some Cubbies in here. Red Sox.
We won't talk about that right now.
SOCKS, by the way, not X.
What was your reaction to what the Pope had to say recently about war, and do you think what kind of influence do you think he'll have on the role of faith in politics?
I think he's in the perfect position, honestly, and I think it's amazing that he's an American, especially at a time right now when, America is kind of quite at the center of geopolitics. I think it's important for him to bring his values, to talk about them. He obviously was opposed to what happened in Iran and made that very clear. And I think that's an important voice to have out there because we need it, right? Like, and especially when you have the whoever's in charge, frankly, of the country, it gets very easy to get into your little tunnel, to see a war basically as just a geopolitical decision or something about, do we have the tools to do it? The reality is there is a human impact from war. And I'll tell you, whether you're in the military or you're in Congress, sometimes you forget about that human impact. You forget about the impact it has on your own people. You forget about the impact it has on the people that you're fighting. War should be something we resort to when everything else is exhausted, and it should be seen as a tool to an outcome, not an outcome in and of itself. And I think having the Pope, whoever the Pope is, but particularly this one out there with that voice, and in many cases being able to speak in our language, and to say that we need to think through those things and those consequences matter to humanity, I think is really important. And I don't know, it's fortuitous timing that he's the Pope, I think, right now.
There was an April Fool's edition of the Tufts newspaper a few years ago that said on the front page, Jesus Christ is going to be the speaker at the Solomont speaker series.
And then instead it's like, nope, sorry, Kinzinger.
Instead we got Kinzinger. You are best known, for better or worse, as the Republican member of Congress who stood up to President Trump and to the Republican Party, your party. You paid a price for that. Malicious attacks from the president and your colleagues. You were censured by the Republican National Committee. You had threats on your physical safety and even criticism from members of your family. And eventually you decided not to seek re-election in 22. Can you explain that decision and help us understand certainly what gave you the courage to stand up for your beliefs, which I think we can see, but why are there so few Republicans in Congress who possess that kind of courage?
So I'll answer the easy part, which is why did I decide not to run again? It's two things. Number one, truthfully, I didn't think I would run again anyway, regardless, without January 6th. I had been in Congress for 12 years. I didn't have any desire to go be a chairman or to be speaker. And I've believed that, so a guy named Arthur Brooks, who's used to be the head of an organization called AEI, which is a actual conservative organization. And he's very much talks about like love and happiness now. Very good, kind of a mentor of mine. He said, you can do one thing, you can do something really good for 10 years. And he says, this is particular with politicians, high-performing CEO types. You can do something good for 10 years. After that, you either have to rediscover your purpose or move to something different. And I noticed that in politics too, by the way. I notice it among people I know at about the 10-year mark. It becomes all about, I want to be chairman or I want to whatever. And you hear less about what does it mean for the district. And look, and thankfully, I would say this all the time because it kind of got in my own head. I would constantly say to the people I'm talking to, I'm like, look, when I lose the passion for what I'm doing, I won't run again. Because you, being a constituent, 700,000 of you deserve somebody that is passionate. All right? I can't have the arrogance to believe that I'm the best one out of 700,000. And so I think so that was the first part. The second part of the question, why wouldn't I, or second part of that is, I didn't run again because I knew I wouldn't win. I mean, honestly, I would have gotten crushed in the primary, and I have no desire to put myself through that, right? Now I have an undefeated record in politics. And so the question
Called quitting
about,
while you're ahead, right?
yeah, quit while you're ahead, man. Why would you jump into a blender? There's no reason. But then secondarily, what's the difference between me and others, and where did I get that from? Listen, I mentioned, so I wear on my wrist, and I don't mean to get too kind of emotional about it, but Andreas O'Keefe is a buddy of mine who was killed in Iraq in 2018. And as I mentioned earlier, if we're going to ask people, you think when you're 22, 25 years old, you're going to go overseas to defend this place, and it's good we have people that do this. And you could get killed, like the end, boom, everything's over. And by the way, I never even understood death until I had my own kid, when I realized that sacrifice, right? I was never scared of dying myself. But now I put him in the shoes of what happens if he goes to war, and it becomes very different and very real. But if we're going to do that, it's not like we have to be willing to put it all on the line for a $174,000 a year job. And when it comes to, now I'm not saying you can't have politics come into decisions, right? Politics comes into everything. But when there is something black and white, like literally an oath-keeping decision, will you follow your oath that you made or not? For me, there was not even a debate. I mean, honestly, it was not a debate, because you can't attack the Capitol of the United States. And you can't try to convince the country that an election was stolen, because self-governance will never work if half of the country believes that the system doesn't work. If half of the country believes it was stolen, this thing we have is over someday if that feeling infects us. Because keep in mind, we fought a revolution that Boston, by the way, played a huge history in. We fought a revolution over the idea that if you're going to tax us, we have to have a say in government. And now all of a sudden, somebody comes along and convinces a significant amount of the population that their vote didn't count, and some literally blood-drinking Satanists were stealing the election. You can look, I mean, it doesn't take a far leap to see January 6th is nothing compared to what could happen eventually. And so I knew, good thing about being younger, I knew that I would have to live with this decision the rest of my life, right? Kinzinger is not a common last name. And so I can't blend in. If my last name was Carlson, maybe I could. But I knew that my kid someday would read about January 6th in that time frame in the history books, and he would talk to me about it. How in the world, and I ask myself this question almost every day about my colleagues, how in the world could you ever, with a straight face, talk to your kid or your grandkid about doing the right thing or doing hard things when this very clear moment came and you did nothing because you were a coward?
How do you just simply, I mean, there are 218 Republican members.
Here's, I think, another differentiating fact is we have made, and this is a bad thing, we have made our political identities I say we, everybody. We've made our political identities our tribal tattoo. And when you have a tribal tattoo, that's the tribe you belong to. We're tribal people. We find safety. It's evolutionary. We find safety and comfort. We have to defend each other, right? You want to belong to a group. And so all of a sudden you're faced with a moment where your consciousness is your conscience is conflicting with your need for safety and security, which is that tribe. It's much easy. We can convince ourselves of anything, by the way, which is why you had people that were able to man guard towers in Auschwitz, because you can convince yourself to get to that point. You have people that all of a sudden, when faced about losing your tribe, they can convince themselves and they make the decision to go this way, to go the easy way. And I think people fear, more than they fear death, I think people fear being kicked out of a tribe. I mean, think about that. I think 8 out of 10 adults, if they see a kid about to get hit by a train, they would jump in front of that train to save the kid. But if I'm asking you to save the country and then lose all your friends, lose your family, lose your social circle, have your identity ripped from you, I think less adults would do that. And I think Congress, unfortunately, is filled with people by nature that are like approval seekers, right? Mm-hmm. That like feedback from people. And all of a sudden, when you're faced with that, it becomes a difficult decision. And I'll just add to that, when all of a sudden Kevin McCarthy goes to Mar-a-Lago and meets with Donald Trump, and then Fox News or whoever starts coming out with really compelling sounding arguments that it was the FBI or it was Antifa or it wasn't as violent as you remember. Guys, I was in my office with my gun out on my desk, like really entertaining the fact that I may have to shoot people to save myself as a U.S. congressman. Like, that's insane. And so, yeah, once all of a sudden compelling arguments come, it's much easier to choose this position. And now I will say, and I say all this to let you know, I'm optimistic on this country, long. But I say all this to say that now people that I worked with in 2000, at the end of my time in Congress, many of them have been replaced by actual true believers, by people that believe an election was stolen, and that's dangerous.
Well, speaking of tribes, why did you choose the Republican Party in the first place? But can you describe for an audience that may lean in the other direction, what your hopes were for how the Republican Party would lead this country? And then do you think it can be reformed? And what do you think the Republican Party will look like after Trump?
So the reason I was a Republican, well, first off, my parents were, so that, that leads to a little bit. I came up in the time of Ronald Reagan, which he was a great president. I'm sorry, guys, he was great. Anyway, I know I'm seeing some head shaking out there. Yeah, I think Barack was too. But when you're a kid, Red Dawn is my favorite movie. That was out. But really, the serious answer to it is I was always a moderate Republican, right? And I was always one that believed if we can shrink the role of government, bring the finances in line, have a social safety net that actually works very effectively, and a strong national defense. And I think America has a mission statement, which is to be an example of self-governance to billions of people around the world that are desperate for that example. And I use that to say the third generation of people that lived behind the Iron Curtain in Eastern Europe, they tore the Iron Curtain down, and they didn't do it because of the American military. They did it because for 3 generations, they saw what freedom looked like, and they decided they wanted that for themselves. That, to me, is a massive inspiration. Now, I'm not saying the Democrats aren't that. In fact, I would argue that the Democrats now are the party of patriotism. And I think Democrats need to take that back, by the way. But so that was kind of where I came down, and I'm like, I fit more into the Republican Party in my mind. But it didn't take long for me to get into Congress to see the party being stripped away. And I just refused to move with it. To where it is now. And I also would argue, and this is a longer conversation, so I'll just say the controversial thing, which is I don't think there is a conservative movement that is alive right now. because I don't think the Republican Party, they are a right-wing movement, but they are not a conservative movement. There's nothing conservative about owning 20% of NVIDIA. There's nothing conservative about the president taking kickbacks from everywhere. There's nothing conservative about reckless wars. There's nothing conservative about the amount of spending he's doing. So then the question is, what does the Republican Party become after Trump? This is the million-dollar question. I think there's two possible scenarios here, which is somebody that's, I don't know, and can speak well or whatever, comes along and inherits Donald Trump's movement and recognizes the power of America first, recognizes the power of Christian nationalism, and harnesses that and takes over the GOP. There's another chance that you get kind of your typical American firsters, or somebody comes along that's just straight up kind of racist right wing, right? Everything becomes anti-immigrant, anti-immigration. And by the way, guys, their anti-immigration stand, it's not about immigration, it's about race. There is a reason that Donald Trump is okay with white South Afrikaners coming to the United States. Nothing against white South Afrikaners, but when he points them out by name, creates a special program, and then he wonders why we don't have more immigrants from Norway and Sweden, it doesn't take long to figure out what this is really about. And so I think that's possibility. There is a small possibility that the party returns to kind of the party that you and I knew growing up. But I think ultimately it's going to be determined by, do they get their butts kicked? If they get crushed, there's nothing like losing power to kind of make you look inside. I am optimistic about this country. I can't say I'm optimistic long about the Republican Party.
You are such a product of the 80s.
I am. Let's talk about Rocky, too.
Well, speaking of reckless wars, so tell us what your view is of the current war in Iran. And let me ask you, do you think Congress should have been consulted? Do you think what President Trump was threatening would be constituted war crimes? And is it over? And if not, how do you think it will end? Now, you wrote this morning in Substack about your view of the current outcome. Maybe you could speak to that as well.
So I'll speak and then let me know what I missed there, because there were a few important points. But first off, should he have consulted Congress? Yes. I don't think the president needs to come to Congress if it's like one strike in some country and it's time sensitive, right? You can't bring every decision to Congress. But something like this, which is clearly had the potential to spiral into World War III, and we may still be sitting at the beginning of World War III, I absolutely think he should have. One of his other sins in this was, frankly, not preparing the American people. Here's the thing, guys. This is not Donald Trump's military. This is our military with our people using our weapons bought by our tax money. So just saying to the American people, giving a speech to them is essential in the start, because I don't know if that's my phone or, it is essential in the start because it is our military, not his. Now, I would not have launched this war. I want to say I'm pretty hawkish on Iran, but I also believe if you do decide to go to war with Iran, you have to have a few things. Number one, a clear outcome in mind. You have to have the ability to achieve that outcome. You have to corner that with diplomacy, because the only time you use the military is to force a diplomatic outcome. The military in and of itself is not an end goal unless you're defending the country. And I think also, so what was I saying there on that? He had these, you have to have a goal, you have to clearly, and you have to have the strategic patience to see it through. One of the things I knew would happen from day one is Donald Trump would get panicked or tired or impatient, and he would start this war and end it on bad terms, which is way worse than not doing anything at all, or way worse than seeing it through. And how did I know this? Because on day one, he's like, we already won. Day two, he's like, yeah, we won. Day three, we need NATO. Day four, we don't need NATO. Day six, I was just testing them. We do. They failed. We're out of NATO. I could read the timeline. Literally every day was a crazy statement that culminated in him saying, we are going to wipe a civilization off the earth, which clearly would be a war crime. I would argue the tweet itself was a war crime. And then within a breakneck speed, he's like, we have the greatest deal in the world. Well, let me tell you guys what that deal is. That deal took a very isolated country that had no control over the Strait of Hormuz, and it gave them the Strait of Hormuz as a weapon. They don't need nukes now because they have that. They have the same amount of enriched uranium that they had when this was started. There's a younger Ayatollah in place that's harder. A younger Ayatollah. Yes, he can say we degraded their missile capability. That's true, but why did Iran have missiles? They had missiles to preserve their regime. The missiles are not an in-state goal of Iran. The in-state goal is the preservation of their regime. So you can take out 2/3 of their missiles, but they did exactly what they were meant to do, which is to preserve the regime. And they could buy more and make more. Same thing with the drones. They talk about we sunk the Iranian Navy. Great. The Iranian Navy, the only thing we were scared of the Iranian Navy for was that they might shut down the Strait of Hormuz. You don't even need them now. We destroyed the Iranian Air Force. Awesome. The Iranian Air Force was never a threat to us. And now Iran is going to charge tolls to the tune of $90 billion a year. So Iran comes out of this in a stronger position. Listen, when you're a democracy and you go to war, you have a much lower pain threshold than an autocracy does because you don't need public opinion if you're an autocrat. You have to take that into account before you launch a war. And this president launched a war, started negotiating with himself in public, which was very clearly a message to the Iranian regime. This guy doesn't know what he wants. He's panicking because you and I can see that. You know they can see it. He's panicking. We just have to wait him out, and he's going to give us the best deal ever. And that's exactly what happened. So I think it was a dumb-ass thing to launch. It was launched without a goal. It was launched because Trump wanted to see stuff blow up. And I'm offended because the United States military is the best in the world, and he just gave us a loss for no reason except that he wanted to see some things blow up. So yeah, that's my thought on that. What was the other parts of the question? So I want to make sure I didn't.
You answered it brilliantly. You recommended that the Article 25 or Section 25 be invoked in the first Trump administration.
Yeah.
I will not ask you.
No, I do think it needs to now. You want to ask me that or not?
No.
Okay.
Because I was just told last question, so I don't want that to qualify as the last question. Well, as Jen McAndrew said in her opening remarks, this is the 250th anniversary. And here at Tisch College, we're reflecting on this milestone for the nation with all its glories and with all its imperfections. And we're grappling with the question, what's next for American democracy? So before I open up the conversation to our audience, what gives you hope when you reflect on the future of our democracy?
I'm so glad you asked this question because I actually think it's amazing that this year is our 250th anniversary. Initially, I'm kind of like, why is it this year? Right? This is not the administration I want celebrating the 250th, but I think it's amazing because every generation of Americans has had a challenge that was borderline existential to America. It may have been an economic challenge. It may have been a challenge with, I don't know, maybe it was a war, world war, pandemic, a civil war, a civil rights battle. Whatever it is, every generation had that moment where there were people in the generation that felt like this may be the end for our country. So we're no different in that. Every generation has carried that weight and left a country stronger than they inherited when that moment passed. I don't think we're going to be any different. And I think we're going to refuse to fail. My grandfather stared down the Nazis on a beach in France, and basically it messed him up mentally. and could never talk about the war the rest of his life. And I think about his sacrifice, that generation's sacrifice, my generation after 9/11, the Vietnam generation, which, by the way, I have so much affection for the Vietnam people because when you came back from the war, you got spit on, and you're the reason I got applauded. This is something that's hard for me to talk about, but I got applauded when we came back. You know, there would be people in Baltimore airport just standing there clapping for, 200 people as we get off the plane, just people standing in line clapping. They do that all day because they wanted to send a message that the soldiers were appreciated, regardless of the opinion of the war. Every generation has had their sacrifice. To think that we are going to be the generation that this thing dies on, I refuse to believe it. And we're not being asked, like our friends in Ukraine, to sit in a trench and defend against this evil, reckless attack by Russia. We're not asked to put our lives on the line. We're just asked to not give up hope. That's it. I said this in my DNC speech. I said, we're all in this like sometimes awkward alliance to defend democracy. But in Ukraine, you have a machinist next to a college professor, next to somebody that played the piano, putting their life on the line to defend freedom in their country. And we're just being asked not to give up hope. I think we can pull that off. And that's my recommendation this 250th year is like, take that burden that you carry on your shoulder for the country every day that like weighs you down and depresses you and drop it because you're not in this alone. We're all in this together. Doesn't matter what our opinion is on every stupid issue. I want people that disagree with me. Otherwise, life's no fun. But what matters is that we're defending democracy and we're not asked to do it with our life. So we're going to get through this. And that's what I think the best message for the 250th anniversary is they're going to write stories about like this moment, this movement. And I think we're going to come out of this even stronger than we went in. And it's amazing that it's going to happen on the 250th year.
Well, so thank you. I think people approve, are pleased and even uplifted. So we want to open it up to audience question and answer. If you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand. I'm going to give preference to students. I'll warn you. Please introduce yourself and keep your question short and sweet.
I think they got mics coming around. So
yeah. Okay. You're a student, right? I'm sorry? You're a student?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Forgive me for that awkwardness back there. President, about a month ago, said that he wants to federalize elections in about 15 jurisdictions. Now, I've read Article 1, Section 4, and that's not legal. What say you?
Thanks for your quick question. I like that. By the way, I forgot to mention, Mr. Ambassador, it is an honor to be here with you, by the way.
Oh.
Your reputation precedes you in a good way, and it's very nice.
Igualmente.
What's it? Look, I think it's anti-constitutional, what he's trying to do. I think, and the ironic thing, when I talk about conservatism being dead, this is one of the front and center points, which is one of the things conservatives used to brag about is how we do have a decentralized election system, right? There's not one election in this country. There's thousands of elections in this country. They may have the same names on their ballot, but there's thousands of elections. And that's a strength. Like, creates some chaos sometimes, but it's a strength because if you're a foreign adversary that wants to hack our election system, good luck, right? But clearly what is being done is an attempt to centralize control, to have influence. But I think just as importantly, because I think clearly this will fail, and I think his executive order is going to be thrown out, this is laying the groundwork for declaring that the election is stolen. I mean, I will tell you, in some circles of Republican politics, it is a religion almost, a religious belief that millions of illegals vote. And so you hear this all the time and you're like, there's no facts, it's not true, but it is like a religious, like, part of like a precept of faith that this happens. And it's just not true. And so he's laying the groundwork to declare the election as stolen for two reasons. Number one, maybe to have influence in changing the outcome. Number two, because he is honestly such a narcissist that he can't take losing. That's why he's obsessed about 2020. That's why he hates me, because I constantly point out that he lost. I mean, that's what this is. And so, yeah, and I think when I talk about the danger of this, and I'll answer shorter, so we can get to more questions, but I do want to say this. When I talk about the danger of this, I have been to, and you especially, sir, having been a world traveler, you've been to countries where democracy is fragile or has failed. And the thing that is common to all of them is a loss of faith in being able to have their voice heard in some way. And how in the United States do we have our voice heard? It's not through Twitter, even though it's great that you can scream and yell on Twitter. I do it. But it is through your vote. And when you convince the country that you have been silenced, the outcome is bad.
And just Tisch College has been a leader in all of higher education in encouraging college students, specifically young people generally, to participate, that their vote matters. We're facing some challenges right now, but we're going to continue to do that. Yes, this gentleman with the glasses, yeah.
Should I wait for the mic?
Yes, please.
You talked about I think oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm a freshman. I'm Rishabh. You talked about the notion of the self-governance that leads the world. And one thing I feel that's a little bit concerning is that I don't feel like we have the same goals in the country right now. And that's something very concerning. And I don't know what it is. It also sometimes feels like we live in different realities.
Yeah.
You talked about the 2020 election, and Fox News was knowingly lying, we saw, but also smaller lies like the illegal immigrants voting, or the Haitian cats and dogs, which J.D. Vance admits he's lying. And you talked about the country not working with that. How do you see us moving forward in a way that the country can work when we have this alternate reality where 50% of the country, half the country sees the reality one way, the other half another way?
Yep, it's a great question. Look, I think that's the big challenge. If you look at every new technology, the generation that adopts the technology, and I'm going to go to examples so you know what I'm talking about. A generation that adopts technology doesn't know how to handle it, typically abuses it, and future generations come along and moderate. As an example, soda. Do you guys call it soda or pop here?
Soda.
I grew up with pop, but anyway. So
Oh, it's soda pop.
Soda pop. Let's just say Coca-Cola. When that was invented, you had a lot of people that were drinking a case of Coke a day, right? They really were. And then all of a sudden you realize the health benefit or the health damage that it creates. So when I had cocaine, it was a little more beneficial, but when the damage that it created, and so future generations moderated it. And I could go through every technology with that. Radio, you had the War of the Worlds radio program that people thought was real, and then you kind of learn from that and that settles down. Television's had its own, and technology is this moment right now, and AI is bringing this to the high. I mean, how many times have you been on? The worst is Threads. I post on Threads, and there's always AI military pictures of I'm going to war. I'm probably going to get shot, and then all under it, it's all these, oh, be safe, praying for you, and it's so figure 8 fingers and whatever, and so eventually, I believe people will be able to distinguish better what's fake and what's real. And we will have to be, and I don't know how we get to this, but we will have to be compelled to take ownership of our own information and what we read. It used to be you had the evening news. So you could get spun up. It was generally pretty neutral. Here's what happened. Choose what you believe. And then Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and that ecosystem came along. And I think 20 years of I can't speak today, of brainwashing people in a certain worldview is coming home to roost, right? And so I think eventually the newer generations, the next generations, and I think your guys' generation is already starting to get there, have got to be wiser about taking into account what they believe and recognize when they're being brainwashed. And I think that's the answer. I wish I did, I don't have a prescription that I can lay out right now to get there, but that's going to be what it is. Because we are in our own information silos, and we need to quit wanting to be drones that are spoon-fed rage. Right? How many people's lives are literally being shortened by BS rage they are being fed, right? You can have your view of like transgender in sports, whatever, but I got to tell you, the amount of attention Fox News gives to it compared to the percent of actual transgender people in sports is like an 80 gajillion to 1 ratio because it's creating rage. That's what, remember the migrant caravans, right? Whenever Trump did anything bad in the first administration, there was always a new migrant caravan that was coming magically. So yeah.
You know, a great leader once said that pessimists all die the same way, but optimists live differently. You're an optimist.
That is true. Yeah.
Next question, right there.
Hi, thank you. My name is Faris Nasrullah. I'm a first-year Malt student here at the Fletcher School, and I would love to know your thoughts on the United States' transition to more hard power tactics, and if it is sustainable for the U.S. to continue using them, as well as if using hard power will ultimately be more isolating.
Yeah, that's a great, man, you guys have a good question.
Smart people.
I can honestly say I've never gotten that question. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think our default to hard power is becoming very dangerous in that, look, and let's just go away from the moral side for a second of it, which is every time we go to war or we use war, we actually reveal secrets. And, you know, in 2003, when we attacked Iraq, we revealed that we had this amazing arsenal of GPS-guided bombs, standoff munitions, and some other stuff. And so what happens is we use it. Our enemy, the real enemy, like China, Russia, you know, I won't call them enemy, but the competition, the ones that we have to be wary about, now they learn from everything we've done, and so they adjust their defense. So now we have to innovate again. It's one of the things that Russia has done was just basically revealed how it does war. And so we've been able to exploit everything they've used on the Ukrainian battlefield. You know, the rescue of the Wizzo, the CIA stupidly revealed that it used this murmur, right? Why would you reveal that, first off, where it can detect a faint heartbeat? But secondly, now the enemy knows how to, they know you're doing something, so they can try to figure it out. So there's so from an actual tactical perspective, that's a problem. The second thing is it does damage our soul. I think the military is important. If you use it because you have no other choice and your goal is a certain outcome and you want to use it as judiciously as necessary to achieve that goal or to save lives, right? You know, if there's a oppression going on or something like that. When you bomb, guys, when you bomb boats in the Caribbean, and let me just go even more egregious. When there are two guys hanging onto a boat in the Caribbean that had been hit, they are no longer combatants, and you drop a second and third missile onto them. The damage that does to our soul as a nation is incalculable. When Donald Trump threatens to extinguish a civilization, what it does is it takes our moral authority, which is amazingly powerful, and it brings us down to Vladimir Putin's level. And having moral authority is essential. The other thing is, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, as we talked about. We had oversight of State Department, and there was a lot of stuff State Department does that ticked me off. Probably you too.
Believe me.
It's extremely bureaucratic. It's this and this and this, right? But I also recognize the State Department is essential to prevent war. USAID, I'm going to give you a quick story. I told you these would be short, but I lied. I was in Kenya and Ethiopia because I always had an interest in Africa. And specifically, I'll think of this village I went to in Kenya. And I go in and they're showing me, my tour guides or whatever, the government folks are showing me this small little farm. Probably the whole farm was the size of up here. And there was a house on it and 2 cows and 4 kids. And they were telling me how these cows only produced like a couple quarts of milk a day. And then a kid from the University of Illinois in the ag program came up through USAID, taught them how to feed their cows and care for them better. Now the cows make whatever, 6 quarts of milk a day or whatever a cow makes. And they're able to take, now they have enough for their family and they're able to take the excess. They take it down to this co-op they showed me that, by the way, was built by the United States of America through USAID. So now this family can feed themselves and also has extra money. And, you know, because of this, and it revolutionized this village. I mean, they went from making whatever, $100 a month to 300, which to you and I is nothing, but to them was the world. And as I'm learning this, there's like dozens of people that start gathering around me from the village. And I realized they were there to see me, not because they didn't know who I was, like January 6th hadn't happened yet. They came to see me because they knew I was from the United States of America. And the United States of America changed their life. And you will never recruit an enemy out of that village, because when they think of America, they think of somebody that changed their life. That is the importance of soft power. There's a moral imperative. It's morally damaging to use hard power. Sometimes it's necessary. But soft power is a cheaper, more morally effective way to do what we need to do.
General James Mattis. Hey, Secretary of Defense used to argue for the State Department's appropriation because it will save us money on bombs, basically.
Think about this, like in Iran, every Patriot missile that was fired was $1.5 million. And we fired 800 of them, at least, which, by the way, would have been amazing to be in Ukraine against the Russian attacks. But you think about that, the money that was spent, and we could have funded USAID for years. For ice, what we're spending on friggin' ice. Yeah.
Well, okay. I think the person with the orange shirt.
Orange shirt person.
Oh, am I? Oh, no. I wanted you to ask a question. Okay, another one.
Whoever.
I've been calling on all men, so I'm looking for. Well, I'm correcting my ways, okay?
Yeah, that's all you can ask for.
Come on. The first woman who stands up can ask a question.
Right here, right
Okay.
here, right here.
Okay.
There you go.
We waive the student requirement, I think.
I'm Pearl Robinson. I teach African politics here.
How are you?
About more than 40 years ago, I wrote an article titled "Whether the Future of Blacks in the Republican Party." Now, you actually happen to be one of my very favorite TV Republicans.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
But
Those are slim pickings.
Yeah, it's like.
but I came here to see who else would be here.
Mhm.
So my question for you is, where are the blacks and where are the whites in the Republican Party?
Look, I think so. I don't know. Are you talking about where are they when it comes to Republicanism right now?
Why aren't more people here to see you? Yes.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know. Look, I think in general, there was obviously huge gains made by the GOP among Black and Hispanic populations in the last election. I think that is largely reversing now. And I think what happened is this is what I understand, is tend to be a little more socially conservative. They wanted to give the GOP and Trump a chance, but it's not like he was winning them over. And I think he's clearly showed that he's not the person there. In terms of why people don't come see me, I don't know. Usually it's packed. What's that?
Because of what you do. Anyway,
Yeah, well, thank you.
That's really sort of a
Yeah.
Next time you come, I bet you we'll have to be in Cousins Auditorium. One more question. Yes, right there. Yes, you.
Yep, it's you. Oh, you look for the mic. Okay.
I wanted to make it hard on the mic.
Okay, I have a burning question about Russia because I don't feel there's enough arrows being pointed to Russia pulling the strings. And your reference to the soft power, USAID, Voice of America, all of the things that make America great
Mm-hmm.
are exactly the things that are being completely destroyed right
Yes.
now. And I'm also former military. The only reason I can understand would be that Russia's pulling the strings. And I would appreciate your thought on this.
Look, I had avoided saying anything like this for a long time because I'm like, I don't want to just be hysterical on it. I do think there's part of Trump that admires strongmen because he wants to be one. But I've got to tell you, the fact that literally not once, even after they targeted our soldiers and gave targeted information to Iran, even after I think they replenished some of their air defense, which is why we lost the F-15, and certainly they will in this 2-week interlude if that's all it ends up being, he still cannot say a bad word about them. I mean, they are murdering civilians in Ukraine over and over. And I get it. You know, we bombed a girls' school. That was terrible. We did not do that intentionally. Russia intentionally flies these things into apartment buildings. They have something called human safaris now, where they have drone operators killing civilians and they get points for it. Kids, even. You get more points for a kid, by the way. And I could go through the pure evil of it. And Russia is losing 1,300 men a day. Russia has lost 1.3 million people, and they own less territory than they did 2 weeks into the invasion. And yet he keeps sending them to the slaughter. And so I would just think from a perspective that Trump should be like, they suck at war. Like, why would you respect them? They're getting crushed. There's something there, though. And I'm not going to go as deep as to say he was an asset or he was whatever, but there is something going on there because it is just unlike him, or it's unlike him to not criticize them at all, especially when they show weakness too. So I don't know. And what drives me insane is that I have a lot of people I know that are still in Congress that will put out their concern tweets, right? Like, Trump needs to realize that NATO is important. Okay, great. Put out your tweet. But do you know, if you're a Republican member of the House, it only takes 2 of you to shut down everything on the floor of the House of Representatives and demand that action happens before you reopen it. If Don Bacon and somebody else made a decision to say not a single rule which governs and basically allows the floor to operate, not a single rule gets passed, not a single bill gets passed until we put a $30 billion aid to Ukraine on the floor, that aid to Ukraine would be on the floor in 3 days because Mike Johnson would have no option but to relent. But you know what that means? That takes courage, and that takes being able to take mean tweets against you. And all of them don't do it. And even the ones, I'm going to go off on a quick rant, even the ones that are not running again, they won't do it. And they won't do it because they all want to go lobby and make a lot of money. And you can't lobby if you piss off all the people you work with. And so they'll put out their tweets. They may occasionally vote right, but they won't do what they really need to do because they need, a year after coming out of Congress, you can go back to lobbying and make $5 million. That's what they want right now. And it's disgusting. Honestly, it's disgusting.
Quick yes, no question.
Okay.
Without Russian interference, would Hillary Clinton have won in 16?
Yes,
Okay.
clearly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you to our live audience.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Wait. It's we always give gifts at these speakers events, and you are certainly deserving of a Tisch College hat.
Yeah. All right.
But that's not all.
All right.
This is like, come on down.
That actually looks really nice too.
Yeah, look at
Wow,
the jumbo.
awesome. I like it. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Yeah, wait, let's see.
Uh-oh.
No, you get the bag as well. Oh, wait. Oh, here's a great moleskin pad paper.
Excellent.
You can,
Thank you.
thank you all. Adam, thank you.
It was great. Thank
Really
you
nice.
very much. Thank you. Thanks, guys. No, I can talk about
Actually, Jeff,
Yeah. Oh, good.
It's so nice to have a lottery. It's like you have a sixth sense. You can find.
Oh. Jess, well, let me turn this off. I'm going to ask you to take a quick picture of me. Yeah, here. Yeah, I should turn it off.
Oh,
Yeah.
so cute. We're working here, but we're not based here.
And no later in those. I know. Oh, cool. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I love it. Before you do.
Yeah, thank you.